Now let's talk about what Git is, very generally at first. Let's move in slowly. Git is a version control system. What is very important? A distributed, or in other words, a decentralized version control system. It's about the way this version control system works. Git is also the most popular version control system, which also means that it is not the only one. Git is a free and open source software, so it's developed by the community and is free of charge for the users. Git is light, efficient, fast, and very complex. It has many possibilities and it makes it so popular. But what is a version control system anyway? VCS is used to manage the project in time, and time is the key concept here, because there are stages over the time during which the project changes. And thanks to the version control system, a history of these changes is created. This history includes the key points that collect the information about the state of the work on a project at a certain time. The version control system also allows to cooperate with many people on the same project. Among others, thanks to the fact that it allows to combine the effects of the work of many people into one. The version control system is also a tool that allows you to create the repositories. Repository, the first difficult word in this course. We will talk more about it later, but for now, know that the repository is a concept that includes the project files and the change history record. It is a record of the entire project with all the files and changes in the workspace of the project. The version control system is also a solution that helps you to track the changes and combine the code from many people working on a project. Teamwork on a project often appears in these definitions, but the version control system is also suitable for improving one person's work on different branches of the same project. VCS allows us to track all the changes. We can see what has changed, when, and who introduced these changes. A version control system is also an efficient machine that combines the work of many developers. A machine that can travel back in time to the previous versions of the project and travel between different worlds, which is switching between different branches. We can travel through time throughout the whole project, to go back to its basics, then go back to its last stage. And not only us, but all the people working on this project. Apart from the fact that we can travel in time, we can also travel in space of a certain project, visiting its various branches, which is visible even in the Git logo, where the branches and individual points of the projects are marked. I would like to explain what the distributed version control system means. Each developer or user of a certain repository has their own complete repository on their computer, local repository. Most often there's also a repository that is defined as main, central, or remote, because it is located on a server, which is often the GitHub platform. Each developer works on his own local repository on his computer and synchronizes it with the remote repository on the server. Changes made in local repositories by individual developers are applied to the remote repository, so everyone can work independently on the same project. The changes to the local repository are linked to the main repository, and the local repository can be updated with the changes to the global repository. To work on a project, however, a permanent connection to the main remote repository is not required, because you work with the local repository and only synchronize it with the main repository. This is what a distributed version control system is all about. We do not have one repository on which we all work and depend on. Each developer works independently on their local repository and only occasionally synchronizes it with the main remote repository. How Git works, another important thing. And here are three important concepts. We have already mentioned one thing, the repository. So what does Git do? Git takes the snapshots and stores them in the project's repository objects. Imagine the repository as some kind of a folder in your project for now. Invisible folder, but it's there. And this folder holds the database. A database that contains all the information important to us about the project by taking the snapshots. These are so-called freeze frames of the project. We pause the state of the project and make a freeze frame of it, or as it should be said, a snapshot, and place it in the repository. And the repository consists of these individual points with the different states of the project. These are the snapshots, and we create the snapshots using commits. You can think of commits as saving changes to a project, and saving these changes to the project creates a snapshot. At some point in a project, for example when you modify or add files, you can make a so-called commit, which is saving the current state of the project in the repository, such as a freeze frame or a save. Such a snapshot contains the complete project status of all files in the project. And this is a basic fundamental part of Git. GitHub will probably be a very important part of your learning and use of Git. GitHub is not the same as Git. GitHub is a website, a platform on which we can create and store the repositories. It is on GitHub that we most often store the main remote repository of our project. GitHub also acts as a backup of our project. GitHub also gives you a lot of tools that you can use when working with Git. That's why you may have guessed that the name GitHub is not accidental, because we are putting Git-based repositories there. Another issue is Git and command line applications. Git enables us to work through the command line. This is the natural first way to work with Git. There are some graphical interfaces to support Git, but we need to learn Git commands to get to know it well. So we will enter the commands in the command line. And there are many common command line applications, so-called text-based shells. The most popular of these is probably Bash, which is available on Mac and Linux. On Windows, many people use PowerShell. Fewer people use such a basic command line for Windows as CMD. By installing Git on Windows, we also get a Bash emulator, which is Git Bash. In this course, we will be using PowerShell and Git Bash. It's worth learning to use the command line at all. It's not just a Git domain. So I will show you how to use the command line in a broader context as well, just to get you used to it too. It will definitely come in handy in the future. Command line interface is CLI. It is worth knowing that not all commands in different CLIs are identical. Some interpreters are much more poor, for example CMD on Windows. Linux and Mac users use Bash the most, but I already mentioned that, so let's keep moving. Code editor. For us it will be Visual Studio Code. For Git, we need to indicate a code editor that Git will be able to use. I will use the VSC editor in this course and its interface will be explained by me to you. A little note, these two shortcuts are very similar, so VSC is Visual Studio Code and VCS is Version Control System. At the end, some fun facts about Git. Git was created in 2005 by Linux creator Linus Torvald, a Swedish-speaking Finn. Git was written in C language. It uses the SHA-1 algorithm, which also makes it very safe. This name is worth remembering. SHA stands for Secure Hash Algorithm, and it's a security system. Git makes the copy of the entire project, not only the changes. Many version control systems do not store unmodified files in subsequent phases. They keep only the changes, files that have been changed. But Git stores everything. The name of Git was invented by the creator of the system, and he called it that way because he wanted to. Today Git is deciphered as the global information tracker. What else we will do in this course? Installing Git and playing with CLI. Git configuration. First repository. Working directory, stage area, commit, snapshot. Some basic Git commands and demonstration how it works. We will return to the presentation to tell ourselves about what I just showed. We will lighten the darkness of Git, concepts and theory. And of course it won't be over yet. Alright, that's the end of the introduction. Now let's start working.